pleasant good day to all my YouTube fans across the world. It is my pleasure once again to stand before you to do another YouTube presentation. And as usual, I, Imo Rameses Bakari, your psychologist and life coach from the magical community of Point Fortin in Trinidad and Tobago in the Southern Caribbean. It is my desire to inspire you to rise higher. It is my desire to inspire you to rise even higher. It is my desire to continue producing inspirational videos, and it is my desire to partner with you in 2025 to ensure that your dreams becomes a reality. And this will be done through writing, through speaking, through teaching, motivational speaking, feature addresses, coaching, and community advocacy. Because after all, you, yes you, are deserving of becoming the best versions of yourself, and we are prepared to work side by side to ensure that these things become a reality in 2025. So my topic today is entitled The Reconstruction of the African Infrastructure. And you may be asking yourself what kind of topic I'm addressing here today. As we all know, the question of identity, and identity simply means who you are, is very critical. We as human beings have multiple identities. People might be identified as tall, as short, as thin, as fat, as handsome, as pretty, as a scientist, as a footballer, as a teacher, belonging to a particular religious faith. So all of these are different forms of identity. And then we have identity in terms of culture. We have identity in terms of physical status, as I said before. And when I talk about the reconstruction of the African infrastructure, it is in the context that, due to the transatlantic slave trade and slavery that followed, it resulted in a total dismantling of the African in his or her natural way to something alien to him or her, meaning language, names, culture, and religious forms were all stripped from him, from us as a people. And as a consequence, we were indoctrinated into colonial methods, imperialist doctrines, and there was a total dismantling of self. There was a total dismantling of the African identity. So the Africans came with knowledge, they came with certain forms of artistic endeavors, but those traditional approaches to life were banned, were disbanded. They had to be done in isolation, and they were discouraged. So they were remade. We have heard about the process of the making of a slave. Many years ago, that famous movie Roots, where the slave came with his name, or was illustrated in the movie Kunta Kinte, and he was whipped into submission to call himself Toby. And that is what you call a clear indication of the stripping of the identity of persons. We also know that many faiths in the Caribbean, they have what you call experience syncretism, a merging of Christian doctrine and African practices, for example, the spiritual Baptists. And when we think of the spiritual Baptists, the African elements in it have always over time been portrayed in a very negative way, and sadly so. But if you take away the drum, if you take away the vibrancy of the dancing and the singing, if you take away that African dimension from that religion, it will become a totally different religion. As one famous psychologist in the United States of America so aptly put it. He said we came from a cultural orientation of operating in balance and not in isolation of other things. So he looked at certain frameworks within which the African operated, and because of the new forms of indoctrination as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, they started to operate on one part of a dichotomy. A dichotomy is something that contrasts or are seen to contrast. So within the African viewpoint of balance, those contrasts are not indistinguishable, but really merge into each other. So some of the dichotomies he highlighted were the individual versus the collective. Africans came from a collective environment of a lot of communal approaches to living. Within the indoctrination in the Western world, individualism has been focused on, where the individual must try to succeed, where the individual must work hard. But within our traditional framework, the community was always the basis. So yes, individuals have roles, but those roles are always within the broader framework of a collective. But many of us in the Western world operate on one side of the dichotomy, the individual side disregarding the communal side. You also have competition versus cooperation. And as we all know, we achieve more together. Traditional African communal living. We know about the whole concept of socionomics, where resources were pooled to address any possible problem in their existence, and successfully so. So to compete could be counterproductive. If you're in an athletic race and you're competing, that has a different context. But when you think of living in the traditional African way, when you think of the Ubuntu concept, I am you, you are me, it all suggests cooperation more than competition. So we need to not operate on one spectrum alone, right? You also have the material and the spiritual. As I've said in previous videos, material goods are essential for living. But we must have a greater purpose, we must have a greater reason for living, and this is where the spiritual dimension will come in. So yes, pursue material gains in the interest of the family, in the interest of a nation, but always be guided by that higher force, by that divine force, by that greater meaning in what you do, and not just be one-sided in a mad chase for material goods, for forgetting that we are essentially spiritual beings, carrying out, acting out in a physical way. But the spiritual always remain at the pinnacle. We also could think of another dichotomy, rationality versus spontaneity. There's a time and space for being spontaneous, but there's also a time and place for deliberate thought and consideration as part of a system, and not taking one side. All right? So according to the argument of Dr. Akbar, is that a lot of the sociological and psychological problems in the African community is as a result of acting on one side of that dichotomy and not part of a balanced system which has been promoted in our traditional way to life. He went on to state that our over-representation in mental health institutions, in prisons, our lack of power, our poor conflict resolution skills, etc., all emanate because of stepping away from that balanced, connected approach and operating on one side of the dichotomy. The eminent psychiatrist and venerable author Frantz Fanon, he discussed the self-hate among our people as unnatural and as pathological. And he, being a psychiatrist, certainly was eminently qualified to discuss such an issue, in that liking your own is natural. And because of that natural way of our existence that we were pushed away from, because of the destruction of family life on the plantation, where families were separated, where different ethnic groups were placed together, where cultural and religious practices were subjugated, where divisions were fostered, field slave, house slave being given certain privileges. Those seeds of division and disunity will pass on over generations, all right? And as a result of that, we have adopted a pathological approach in terms of our love and appreciation for each other. And all of these things, according to two psychiatrists, Hecklin and Morgan, in their book, The Perspectives on Caribbean Psychology, have contributed in moving us away from our natural way of living. As we all know, when anything is unnatural, it is labored, it is cumbersome, it is problematic. When you operate with an alien, or when you, let us put it more simply, if you are a foreigner in a land that you are not accustomed to, you always have to struggle to find a way of surviving. So in terms of our survival, we have a responsibility in reclaiming, and that's why some of us have taken African names in terms of making that significant step in identifying with who we are. And it is imperative upon all of us to recognize that there is great value in our tradition, and adopting the traditions of others could never really make you strong in this world. We need to be properly anchored. We need to be properly connected. And that is why, we have had, activists and theorists over the years stated that once you are connected by blood out of the African continent, you are in fact one. So Marcus Garvey, one of his mantras was one aim, one Africa, one destiny. Africa for Africans at home and abroad. And even in modern times, you have had the African Union designated the diaspora as the sixth region of Africa. So all of that being said, I am making the point that identifying as that is very fundamental to living. Connecting with your natural way of living will give you the impetus, will give you the power, and will give you the focus to live in a way that is in alignment with yourself spiritually, culturally, historically, and otherwise. The slave trade and slavery certainly resulted in a lot of psychic destruction, in a lot of physical destruction. As Dr. Hilary Meckler said in one of his presentations, after emancipation, the emancipated states were going all over the Caribbean trying to identify family. So let us reclaim family life. Let us reclaim that communal approach to living. Let us reclaim that love for one another. And those steps will go a long way in helping us reconstruct the African infrastructure. So these are some of my thoughts on how we can go about reconstructing the African infrastructure. What are your thoughts? Thank you for listening. Thank you for viewing. And feel free to comment, feel free to support our work by contributing through the account information flashing on the screen, through the YP and Patreon link. The Patreon link is linked directly to our bank account. You can also buy my book Conversation, priced at 100 TT, 45 EC or 15 US. You can buy any of the other advertised books or participate in any of the ongoing courses that we offer. All you need to do is give us a call at 1-868-778-5141, 1-868-779-2544, or email us at leadershipwithadifference@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and stay tuned for another powerful presentation next week, please God. Bye.